Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. This is the Go Long Podcast. I'm Tyler Dunn here with Jim Monis for week four wrap-up podcast. As always, we are doing this one remote. We slept on it. I think the first couple weeks we did it like late at night. My energy was pretty low. I was low energy Tyler Dunn there after week two, in Pittsburgh. So, hey, decided, you know what? Let's get that right and done. And we'll come into the podcast fresh, ready to deliver some takes that were in the oven through the night. So hopefully it makes for a better recap. I think it will. I think last week was good. What do you think, Jim?
I see it in you. I noticed. See, with me, we could do it at night after those games because I'm on a mental. My mind is going all over the place from the day of gambling and watching football. Now we're the day after. I'm still fired up. So I'm good either way. If this works better for you, I love it. Because the gambling, here's how it works as a sports gambler. Your Sunday night, you're heated. It's just like if you lose, think about after you lose a game. They always tell you, don't do if you can, don't do a press conference right after the game, right? You're going to say things that you're a little heated. Take time to calm down.
That's the best time for press
Sunday
conferences
night.
And open locker rooms.
Well,
honestly,
for me, yeah. So Sunday nights yes. And at this point, I'm not a player and I'm not in the NFL, so I can be honest Sunday night or Monday morning. But it's better. I have noticed when you do calm down a little, things make it like I was ready to never ever talk about Dan Campbell again, Ron Rivera. I had some issues from yesterday. We'll get into it. But after I slept on it, I have to take a breather. I'm not as angry as Dan Campbell. I'm angry as somebody else on his staff. Ooh. But to your point, it's hard sometimes at night. That's a long day for all of us.
Yeah, I feel like a lot of it has to do with being a dad too. Like back in college.
Well, I didn't want to get into all that too. I didn't want to get into all that.
I mean, I worked at the student newspaper and we'd be there at the Daily Orange till 3, 4 a.m. And it was like you wake up, go to class after a few hours of sleep, your body just kind of gets used to that schedule where now, when you're up at 4 and change in the morning with kids, like if you stay up till 1, 2 a.m., you're probably going to be in rough shape for the rest of the day.
Yeah, you're cheating yourself because that happens to me too, where I'm cheating. I feel like the longer I stay up, I'm cheating myself of sleep because you just never know when they're going to wake up. You hope.
Or you have issues with your dog like we had here in Boston, New York.
Tyler, talk about
at 4:30 a.m. Oh my God, Jim.
That's why I don't have pets.
I want to hear us talk about football, so I'll keep it short.
All right.
Yeah. All right. 4:30, I hear Gina yell from the basement, and I didn't know what the hell was wrong. Did we have an intruder? Like what's going on here? Nope, just worse actually. Edmund, COVID boy, Covey, Dingus. He's got several names. Was sprayed by a skunk. So we had a word of warning from our neighbor. Our neighbor texted me the day before, said she had seen a skunk walking about. We're kind of hugged up against the woods here, so we get critters all the time, deer, what have you. But a skunk was a first, and yeah, that skunk found Ed, sprayed him good, right across the face, and it is that smell, man. That smell when you have a dog that's sprayed by a skunk, it hits you like a hurricane across the face of just filth. Awful. And I thought the tomato juice thing was the secret, right? So I'm ready to, it's 4:35 a.m. I'm trying to find anything that's open at 24/7. We got two kids that are crying. They don't know what the hell is going on. Ed is scared to death and he's stinking up the whole house. Oh. So I book it. I'm leaving the house. And as I'm driving, I try to find a 7-Eleven. I'm in the parking lot. I look, let me just Google tomato juice. It's all a myth. It's a hoax. People think tomato juice works for pets sprayed by skunks, but it does nothing. So long story short, hydrogen peroxide mixed with baking soda, mixed with dish soap. It worked to a degree. He still kind of stinks. I've been told it's a process. If you see a skunk, maybe set up some traps, some have heart traps if you want. Well, no, because then they'll spray you. Yeah, I don't know. Just take these skunks down one way or another.
I have a conspiracy theory. I
Uh-oh.
think you did this. I think you set this up so to try to get Gina to not want a second dog.
I wish I was that diabolical.
Actually, I know you.
I like
I don't
it.
think anybody would go to. No, I'm kidding. But there's no way. There's no way anybody would do that to themselves to go to the store at 4:30 a.m. looking for tomato juice and kids are crying and.
But that'll wake you up in a hurry. Like that wakes you up faster than any cup of coffee.
I
Just
will say,
chaos.
I've had pets. Not usually. It's not my choice. I'm not against it. It's usually my significant other's choice. But they're a lot. They're a lot. And it's why I never personally could handle, I could never as a scout, like when I was traveling a lot in the NFL, I couldn't have a pet. Yeah. So, but I have, it's why stuff like that makes me, you just talk, you convince me if I ever did think about, I know they bring a lot of joy and I do love their loyalty and they're awesome, but I couldn't have handled what you just went through. That would have been rough for me.
It's honestly, it's the best. We love Ed. He's
Yeah,
part
they
of
are.
the family. And
No
like I
doubt.
already shudder to think
No
like
doubt.
the emotions whenever
Like you would do, it's just like your kid, you would do anything for Ed, for your kids.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I want to blast that skunk. How dare that skunk attack
That's
Ed?
skunks. I agree with you. Well, there's no need to do it.
Absolutely not. Absolutely.
Another myth I think is peeing on people when they get stung by a jellyfish.
I have never heard that one.
You didn't leave at the beach.
Who started that one? R. Kelly?
No. Look at you. See, you are a night's rest does you wonders. You're on your game.
At the same time, can we make R. Kelly jokes? Because that was a fun joke when R. Kelly when that's the worst that we thought R. Kelly was to humanity, peeing on people.
Right.
Now, he's about a million times worse than that. I don't know if I can really drop that reference.
Right. It's like when are jokes to, I know.
Yeah, we'll edit that one out. Not really. All right, let's talk some football. Week 4 in the NFL, Jim Monos, where shall we begin?
So Tyler, week 4 used to be when it was a 16-game schedule. We would officially say, I didn't hear a lot about this until I was with the Saints and Sean Payton, but they talk about 4 quarters of a season, right? 16 games. So after week 4, you kind of just take a breather. Where are we at? It's like, to me, I always compare it to the first quarter of a football game, right? Like that's how they do it. If you're losing, if you're 1-3, okay, we're scared, but it's not over. Let's get a game plan. Let's battle back. 2-2, let's go. We're right where we need to be. 3-1, you're feeling good. Interesting though. I do think after week 4, it's time now to, I think we can get a feel for where this thing might be going, who's concerned, who's not. So that's kind of where I'm at now, thinking about things. I'm curious to hear your thoughts. Yesterday, I thought opened my eyes to some things. I don't know where you want to start, what game, but that Jets-Steeler game. Go ahead. Yeah, you could start.
No, I was just going to start there because you made this point last week on how coaches, especially like experienced coaches like Mike Tomlin, operate in quarters. So we can take coaches at their word at press conferences if you want. Mike Tomlin has been banging the table that Mitchell Trubisky is his starter, the captain. I don't know if his captaincy remains after getting pulled, but more than words at a podium, what matters is action, is your play. And you made this point, like a quarter into the season, right here is where you would maybe make that move where you're 1-3, the season's not completely lost. You're going to get TJ Watt back. It's not all on Trubisky, right? Matt Canada in this offense, stale. I don't know if you caught Juju Smith-Schuster's quote to NBC. They mentioned it on the broadcast, him saying how he's learned more from Andy Reid in a few months than he learned from the Steelers in a few years offensively. So there might be some bigger problems kind of seeped in to all things Steelers and moving the ball down the field offensively. But they had to do something, right? Trubisky just wasn't cutting it, and you drafted a quarterback in the first round to play him. First round quarterbacks they just don't sit really unless you're
so we
Jordan
talked
Love
about
and you'll take the NFL over in 2023.
Well, we had talked about Pickett before the season started. Remember, we had said because he had that big preseason, and we said should they just do it right now? And we both said why not? Just start him. But they invested in Trubisky. This was their plan. I'm sure it was. Hey, let's regroup. Let's see how Trubisky does first 4 games. They see it, but to me, I'm with you. It's not all on Trubisky because I think we all know he's obviously a good backup at this point. But the offense looked the same with Roethlisberger. This thing hasn't changed, and there's no running game anymore, or enough. There's no running game that would scare another team. So it's not all Trubisky. There's a lot more involved in this, but to hear Juju say that, that's interesting because when you watch those two teams, it makes sense. It's like one team is like innovative. I mean, you've watched all the Chiefs stuff over the years with Mahomes because we're fascinated, but the design of their offense is fascinating. You don't see other teams running the plays they run. I mean, now obviously they can get away with a lot because they have, the greatest one or two, three, the greatest quarterback maybe ever. But man, the Steelers though, that to me was a sign. And we're going to talk about this. I thought Zach Wilson looked terrible. And the Jets just won in Pittsburgh with a second-year quarterback who he's a ways away. I mean,
who looks better to you, Pickett or Wilson?
Say it again.
Who looked better to you, Pickett or Wilson?
That's you know what, I got to be fair because I've seen Wilson play more.
Yeah.
So at this point, I think I might want to roll with Pickett just because I'm kind of I'm almost off with Zach Wilson. And I don't like doing that because quarterbacks take time. So let's give him the whole process. I mean, he's coming off an injury. So I don't want to rush to judgment on Wilson yet. Because we know that I'm going to do my quotes, the air quote thing, but we know the arm strength and the athleticism, blah, blah, blah. Man, there's more to the position than that. It's about accuracy, quick reads, accuracy. And I still see the chaos in Zach Wilson's game that I saw last year. Now that was just his first game this year against a good defense. So I don't want to write him off yet. Pickett didn't blow me away. Did he blow you away yesterday? Pickett?
No. Well, I think, obviously the stat line is damning, but doesn't tell the whole story.
It doesn't,
like we know. If you actually watched it, it felt like there was but I think you saw the effect you get anytime you put a backup quarterback in. A little more energy, a little more hope in the air, a little louder atmosphere at home. That this is what the fans wanted. I mean, he played college ball at Pitt. He did run for a couple touchdowns. So I don't know. I don't know if he's good. I don't know if he's bad. I just know they had to do this.
We don't need to know yet. That's not up for anybody to know yet because we didn't know on Josh Allen for the first 2 years. So yeah, that's why you really do have to be patient. And, we're in but I think what makes it hard with Josh Allen, it was, hey, you saw enough that there's something there and you kept building and the consistency finally happened. Where with Wilson and Pickett, you're going to want to see some signs, like, okay, hey, we've seen enough that we know we can keep building this guy. And I think that's what happens with a guy like Trubisky, where, hey, it's almost like we've seen this enough now. Like in Chicago and here, there's one common theme. He's not going to light people up. That's just not. But once again, don't want to blame all Trubisky because this offense has looked like this now for 3 years.
I think that in the bigger point here, and maybe I should write about this too. It's probably worth a trip to Pittsburgh. Organizationally, it feels like the Steelers just have to once and for all, like, rip a bunch of Band-Aids off, go young, figure out your young nucleus and move forward, right? They're so good at staying competitive and hovering around 500, right? Mike Tomlin's never finished below 500. That stat says everything about how good of a coach he is.
Incredible stat.
But you can't be afraid of taking a step back to take a step forward. I mean, the Bills,
100% agree.
Like you lived that world and trying to make that decision.
We had talked. I mean, yes, you can talk about it, and you have to organizationally be on the same page to do that, and that's hard for a Super Bowl champion like Mike Tomlin and the whole organization to realize. Does Tomlin have that kind of energy? I mean, here's the other hard part for Tomlin. That defense is legit, and that's his baby. And they have some of the best players in the NFL on that side of the ball. You've done you've done stories on all of them. Like they are that worthy. They're worthy of that. They're that special a player. So as a coach and a GM, you're sitting there looking at the defense saying, we have a Super Bowl caliber defense with a bottom 5 offense. I mean, there's no other way to say it.
Why the defense didn't look good though?
But they're sack. Not now, no
TJ
Watt.
Watt.
No Watt. Does that make that big of a difference too? There's a lot of issues in Pittsburgh, and to your point, maybe that's the route they should have discussed a little bit more instead of thinking Trubisky and Pickett can get this thing fixed this year.
I think
if I'm Watt and Minka Fitzpatrick and Cam Hayward, I'd be looking around like, we don't want to waste years here. What's the plan?
At the same time, I think they're going to look back at whatever it was, October 2nd, and say, all right, biting the bullet on that day and just rolling with Pickett is what we had to do. You had to do it. Like, otherwise, what are you trying to do?
Exactly. They'll wipe that. Hey, first quarter done. Let's not even think about it. Let's move forward. They'll do that.
Yeah. I mean, hey, I thought that Trubisky was going to play better. Like,
I thought he played functional. I always thought
Steelers.
Trubisky at this point was functional. This is the word I use with him.
Yeah.
It's hard even. But what about
what I do like about Pickett is he's giving these big receivers a shot. Like even the first throw of his career, that shouldn't have been a pick. Obviously, Claypool, it's in his hands. Like
he could have made that
there.
play.
When you've got talented dudes out there that are 6'5".
Claypool didn't judge that right. He wasn't able to. He didn't track that correct. Like he wasn't able to use his length to his advantage on that. I agree with you. He could have made that play. And once again, we talked about this last week where Trubisky does not give guys chances. He throws the ball out of bounds. Like
everything is toward the sideline. Very little in the middle of the field. Always.
So yeah, Pickett, and it's going to give the team, like it does give the team a shot of life. I mean, okay, hey, we know that the front office, the head coach backed this quarterback, that we took him in the first round. Let's get behind him. Now on the defensive side, as professionals, you try to raise your game even more because you know you have a rookie, and hey, we know we need to cause turnovers. We need to whatever it takes at this point to get this thing right. But it's going to be hard. That the AFC, we talked about it so much, but I'm sorry, we're sitting here talking about Trubisky, Pickett, Zach Wilson. This is bottom barrel. This is bottom barrel in the AFC quarterback because there is high level
underdogs.
QB play.
To your point, 14-point underdogs against Josh Allen's Buffalo Bills Sunday. 14-point underdogs for a Pittsburgh Steelers team.
As we're talking, I'm locking that in before that thing goes down because that's a magic number. I'll take 14 with just about anybody.
I just can't see. God, would they really hit rock bottom to that degree? I know it's on the road.
They just beat Buffalo last year.
Yeah, I was going to say that, but that was with TJ Watt on the field too.
Is Watt coming back?
I don't think so. Right? You never know with the Watts, but that's a pretty serious injury.
We may spend a little too much time on that, but I felt like I wanted to address that Steeler team. I know right now as an organization, as a Pittsburgh proud organization, to lose to the Jets at home on a game that the Jets really didn't, I mean, they weren't that great. To lose that game, that's an eye opener in the building. Like, whoa, where like to use, how have we fallen? We're 14-point underdogs against a team we just beat last year. So,
man, now you got me thinking. That's why I love doing this podcast too. It gets some story ideas flowing. I think that people, even if you're not a Steelers fan, what a fascinating juncture in this franchise history, right? As they go into Buffalo now.
That's what I took. That's a lot of that. We'll keep talking about this, but yesterday was opening my eyes to some things with organizations, because I think they need to start being held accountable a little bit to the players. Agreed. Not to and the fans, but to the players. I mean, those guys on defense in Pittsburgh, they're not young. Cam Hayward, he's not young.
I know.
No, Fitzpatrick and TJ Watt are still young, but those guys want to win now.
Should we just talk about the Steelers for a couple hours? Is that what everybody wants out there?
Well, I tell you, we've done a good job of last year. I felt like, or the first year, we did Mahomes and Aaron Rodgers to death. Now we're doing Steelers and let's do the Detroit Lions.
Let's talk about those Detroit Lions. All right, here's the Lions in a nutshell, right?
I want to
I don't
hear
want
it.
to. Well, they're number one on offense statistically, points per game,
Mhm.
35 points per game, 4 games
Yep.
in.
Yep.
Dead last on defense, 35.3 points allowed per game.
Not the
Here's
only
their
one.
offensive production through 4 games. 35 points, 386 yards. 36 points, 425 yards. 24 points, 416 yards. And then on Sunday evening against your Seattle Seahawks, 45 points, 520 yards. This is with like injuries galore, by the way. I mean, they've been without their interior on the offensive line at times. They've been without DeAndre Swift got banged up early. He didn't even play yesterday, and the game before that he was not himself.
It doesn't
They
matter.
didn't have Amon-Ra St. Brown this past game or DJ Shark. They're down to Josh Reynolds and DJ Hawkinson. Jared Goff is lighting it up. The offensive line is doing exactly what they detailed in our series. They are just breaking people. It doesn't matter who's out there. That line is legit. They built up there. You can't point the finger at this offense whatsoever, yet they're 1-3. All those numbers being said, they're 1-3 because their defense cannot stop a nosebleed, Jim. I mean, Aaron Glenn, former Jets cornerback, is the coordinator. Going into this season, he was considered this, head coach candidate possibility, rising star. I don't know. A lot of those lists kind of make the rounds, and you wonder like how these lists are made. I don't know what constitutes like a rising star from a not rising star assistant coach. What
It's
have
another
you? He's on
podcast
those lists, and now he could be out of a job soon. I would
that
think.
quick. So Dan Campbell and Glenn were in New Orleans together. Okay. This is now Dan Campbell. This is going to be a tough one for Dan Campbell. You've invested in the defense a little bit, right? They just drafted the DN from Michigan, Hutchinson. He's going to have a tough decision. You're going to have to Sean Payton had to do this, where when he got his job first crack in New Orleans, he brought in Gary Gibbs as the defensive coordinator from Dallas. They worked together in Dallas. Very respected guy. Great coach too, I thought. But it wasn't working on defense. Coach Payton fired him. It's not easy. You have a professional relationship. I never know how tight any of these guys are off the field, or just like any job,
right?
But professional, it's going to be hard. But Dan Campbell's probably going to have to, because at some point, you're going to have to. We know the coordinators are always the scapegoat. It's always the first fire, right? Because the next one's going to be you. So whenever you want to do your Aaron Glenn, be careful because the next one's going to be looked at you. But they're 1-3. And I still don't believe that they can win or get to a championship or with Jared Goff. I don't see that. But the numbers offensively are staggering right now. They really are. Now, there are some fake stats I thought early in the season where I graded Goff. I didn't grade him the last 2 games, but he was putting up stats, but it was fake. It was fake.
Hey,
I'm done with Goff. I don't want to talk about Goff anymore.
Well, that's why it's your anti-Goffite bias.
No, he's fine. He's fine. He's
polluting and diluting a perfectly good argument.
I would rather have Goff than Zach Wilson and Pickett right now, but that's saying a lot.
Goff looks great Sunday.
He can be so.
He looked better against Seattle than Russell Wilson. I'll tell you that.
I compared him when we first started. I give you credit because I was a little hard on Goff, but but when you really study him and watch, he does have games. I compared him to the old Braves pitcher, Greg Maddux, who isn't going to blow you away with the fastball, but he is so accurate that it can drive, Goff has that in him sometimes. When he gets in a groove with his accuracy, it's scary, but he's so limited with his athleticism and lack of arm. His arm's good enough. It's not bad, but you see it show up and it's most quarterbacks, but whenever he faces pressure, he can't combat pressure. Like, how does golf counter when a defense is going to get through that offensive line?
Well, that's the thing. They just won't. The offensive line will just block everybody, and they'll never be a
They
problem.
have the most indestructible. They have built the greatest.
They built the wall. They built the wall, and Green Bay's going to pay for it.
Greatest offensive line, greatest quarterback, and you're 1-3. And you just lost to the worst. Don't get me started. You just lost to Seattle. And the reason I'm really upset is because I had that as a last leg of a money line parlay. Detroit just needed to beat Seattle for me to hit that parlay. Not that anybody cares about that, but that's why I'm a little angry. But Seattle is bad on offense.
I'm looking at Detroit's roster on defense, and you mentioned Hutchinson. He's unquestionably at absolute worst, he'll be solid.
I agree with you. I agree. That's a good way to say it.
Beyond him, I mean, Charles Harris considered a semi-revelation last year.
No, is that the Charles Harris from Missouri? Right. No, he can't play. We weren't big fans of him coming out of the draft. He's not the answer.
That's what I was gonna say. It struck me as a guy where he's got 1 sack this year. He had 7.5 last year, but he bounced around Miami to Atlanta before that. If a guy's in the league 5 years, you probably have a good idea of what he is as a player. Maybe he was a little overvalued as like the team's preeminent edge rusher. Like if that's who you're relying on to get pressure, not a good thing. Same thing on the back end, right? I mean, Mike Hughes was a bust in Minnesota. He didn't exactly have much support from his head coach, obviously, but
it's
he wasn't very
patchwork
good.
Defense. I agree with you. I'm really studying. It's a patchwork defense. You're right.
Jeff Okudah's played pretty well.
I like him. Okay. So I was just thinking. I was looking at this. So really, I don't know. Maybe so. They brought Brockers in. They had familiarity with Brockers. He's on the tail end. Charles Harris, no. The D line's not good. Linebackers, Anzalone, they brought him in because they were familiar with him from New Orleans. He's a high effort player, but he's not overly talented. No, the secondary is patchwork. They have issues on that defense side. It's not all the coordinator's fault.
That's the thing. It's not all on Aaron Glenn. Somebody will be held accountable. But this is, for better and worse, I mean, to change the Detroit Lions, they needed to change the way, this is what players told me when I was out there, how you think in the fourth quarter when things are falling apart and everything's going wrong. How do you just remove that gloom, remove that doom? Well, the way that they've kind of removed that gloom and doom is just by getting rid of a lot of players. I mean, team that they inherited, Dan Campbell came right out and said, we're not afraid to play rookies. We want to play rookies. They were the youngest team in the NFL last year. Depending on what you look at, they were either the first or the second youngest team this year. So you've got first and second year players everywhere, unproven, but they're blank slates. And they wanted that blank slate. Psychologically, they value just, this is how we're going to build it. This is what we want you to believe in. There's a lot of good that comes with that. An offense that is lighting it up and an offensive line that is just the embodiment of every Dan Campbell press conference. The bad is you just don't have a lot of talent on defense. Really, there's just not many good players. New coordinator's not going to change that, but they're going to have to do something if it keeps up, and then you just keep getting high picks and you hope these guys develop.
Think about this headache though that you have right now. If you're the GM, Brad Holmes in Detroit, you've built some things, right? Offense right now looks good, but is the quarterback good enough?
Yeah.
So you're sitting there.
Well, of course.
We're sitting here. So we're sitting here banging. This is where
Super Bowl quarterback.
This is where study the stats comes into play, though. Your defense stinks. Okay, so you have to address that as the GM. The defense is not good. The quarterback. You could say what you want about these stats. Is he the guy that can get you to where you want to go? Now, they know that more than we will. Obviously, is he getting done what they want to get done? And the points look good. But is it real? Are these stats real? Is the scoring real? Is Jared Goff real?
And that's the first question you have to ask if you're Brad Holmes, because
number one question.
Because look, your defense is going to need to be completely retooled, reworked.
But to retool it to fix the defense, and stick with Goff.
That's what I'm saying.
Yeah,
Or
exactly.
what they could do is, depending on their draft pick and their options at quarterback, obviously every team desires to be in that position like that Philly's in right now, where you've got a quarterback on a rookie deal, and then you can just go Jacksonville, spend money on all these other players. That's probably where Detroit wants to get to rebuild their defenses. Somehow get out of that Goff contract at some point, have a rookie quarterback, and then go buy a bunch of players on defense. I mean, but wouldn't that run counter to what you're building in the sense too? Like you better know what you're bringing in. I don't know what they're gonna do. I guess I'm just thinking out loud. Like their offense is plenty good with Jared Goff right now. They are scoring more points than anybody in the NFL.
Is it though? Is it? Because a lot of those points came when they were getting blown out early in the season. There, you know what I'm saying? They need to really decide on the quarterback.
Yeah.
And then and then that will determine the rest of their plan.
Gosh, I can't remember how his contract is structured, but
yeah,
very soon they can get out of it. And I think barring a miracle, right, barring a total renaissance, they're going to get out of that contract at their first opportunity if the hit's not overwhelming, I would think.
And then they'll be okay. Yeah, they'll figure that out.
But then if you can get cheap at that position, it's going to open up a lot of possibilities.
I felt like when Anthony Lynn left Detroit, I felt like there was blame placed on him a little bit and the quarterback. I felt like Detroit was setting it up that Goff was, stopgap. He's going to get us through to our next guy. I felt like they didn't really believe that he was the guy. I don't know at this point. I mean, they need to really, like I keep saying, but that's going to be their number one thing are they going to commit to him and then build a defense? I know my answer. I don't think he's the guy.
Yeah, I still think that they draft a quarterback next year somehow.
Free agent. They're going to
philosophically it just makes sense to go that direction. Yeah.
I think when you look at it, and it always goes back to when you watch all the other games.
It does. But I do think that there's still a lot you can take from the offense's start. I mean, when you're moving the ball at will, despite all these injuries, I think that does say more about what they're building on offense than it does about the quarterback play. I do think other quarterbacks could be in this situation because the situation around Jared Goff, even with the injuries, is pretty good because that line is the best in football, and that you can play off that running game.
Like I picture if Daniel Jones was in Detroit, I don't think they're putting up these numbers to give you to back your point up with like Goff. I think Goff is getting done. They're maxing Goff out.
So I just looked it up on Spot Track. Good buddy Mike Giannetti lives here in Western New York, runs this fantastic website for those who didn't know.
He runs that website?
Yeah. I ran into him at Spot Coffee a few weeks ago.
It's a great website.
Oh, he's built an empire. And I'm looking up his Twitter here just so people can follow him. So he is.
You're a football fan.
It's just at Spot Track. Yeah, Mike Giannetti. So he notes on Jared Goff's contract. They do have an out after this season with just a $10 million dead cap. Which seems reasonable, right? That's why I'm saying barring Jared Goff, like taking this team to the playoffs, winning a playoff game, putting up great numbers, which he has great numbers right now. It's I think everybody would kind of agree with what you're saying here, Jim. And
well, how did the Bills handle that with Tyrod?
That's a good point. A lot of it does depend on what is the draft position and who do you like in that draft.
Who quarterbacks are. Yes, all that goes into play.
They weren't going to take Malik Willis, second overall in this draft. It was just a weak draft for the quarterbacks. Yeah, so it was smart to just roll with Goff.
Can't force it.
They play the Patriots in Foxborough this weekend. I mean, two desperate 1-3 teams. That's a sneaky good game to watch.
That leads us right into the Patriot Packers.
Let's do it. It was We see these games out of Bill Belichick. I know that I don't know what the final line was. It was double digit, right? They were double digit underdogs at Lambeau.
This is why that game was shaky. This game was fishy to me all week. It hovered. It stayed at like 9.5. It didn't hit that. Nobody was real willing to commit to the 10 because that's how once you see it go to 10, that means you're like, I'm all in on the Patriots. Like if you get to that 10.5, everybody's taking it. They kept it at 9.5, which kept me looking at that game. I wanted no part of it because something was telling me. And then I looked at the number. Everybody was taking Green Bay, right? Hoyer's playing. There's no difference between Hoyer and Mac Jones. That doesn't affect them. So
then you got the old like, zaps coming in.
So anyway, point being is Vegas knew that the Patriots were going to hang around in that game. Green Bay's not ready to blow teams out yet, I don't think.
Which is fine. I think that
that's what I'm saying. They're learning how to win right now with what this kind of I don't want to say a new team, but kind of Green Bay's learning how to win games like that, which is great this time of year with still one of the top 3 quarterbacks in the NFL. That's a good problem to have. I'm surprised their defense got lit up like that against New England.
They gave up a lot of yards on the ground. New England didn't do anything through the air. Even the touchdown was a good 2-3 seconds after the play clock went off. It shouldn't have counted.
It's like the Colts, the Steelers, the Patriots. Like, catch up to the times here. Like, it's not about. I know you. I don't want you. You need to run the ball in the fourth quarter to win the game. You got to throw to score.
Oh, soft Jim Monis, they call him.
No, but I like defense. I just like quarterbacks and defense. All right, go ahead.
Bill Belichick against really good quarterbacks is always on his A game or close to. I mean, I can't get last year's game against Tampa out of my head where Tom Brady didn't really know what he was looking at. I know Brady made the plays he had to at the end, but as we've noted, it was Jonathan Jones getting hurt for one play. Brady sees Justin Bethel in the slot. Boom, first down, field goal. But Belichick was going to be up for this game against Aaron Rodgers. I think that Belichick loves the historical significance of playing at Lambeau Field. I mean, he was going on and on about Lombardi, Lambeau. Like, he is like
he loves the game
personified. Right. Oh, he does. In he knows going to that field what it means. Because he knows the players and the coaches who have been in that bowl, and it means a lot to him.
He respects it. He respects the NFL.
So you combine that with a really sound game plan for Aaron Rodgers and trying to get inside of his head. I mean, that pick 6 that Aaron Rodgers had at the end of the first half, I think I tweeted, it was like watching somebody drink wine in the stands in Wisconsin. Like, you just don't see it. You don't see picks in general, let alone a pick 6, let alone one at the end of a half when Aaron Rodgers is just spot on. It was crazy, but that's the Belichick effect. Rodgers looked terrible in the first half. He looked awful.
Hard to believe.
But
you know what?
This is why I can't. Go ahead.
I want to wear a Where's Waldo outfit to Lambeau Field in the stands, and I want to drink red wine with a Where's Waldo outfit on. That is you're right. That was that crazy of a scene. Rodgers doesn't throw picks like that.
Never. And if you're drinking wine at Lambeau, I'm going to have one of my buddies back there, Kyle Cusino, Tommy Carnegie. I still got a lot of locals I keep it. They might have to just kick your ass, Jim, if that happens. Well,
I said I was going to wear a Waldo outfit too. I'm pretty sure I'm inviting an ass kicking by that whole by my whole Waldo and some wine.
Packer fans, they won't kick your ass. They'll just get drunk with you. They don't do that to opposing fans, let alone Waldo impersonators. So I think you're good. All right. But my point being, like, the fact that in the second half, the offense turned it on. I mean, Aaron Jones and A.J. Dillon combined for like 200 yards. But
that combination I love that running back combo. Love it.
It all starts there. And the commitment's there from the coach, from the quarterback, which was a question going in. And it felt like a turning point for the receivers because, week 1 was discombobulation everywhere in Minneapolis. In this game, you had, look at it. You had Romeo Doubs, catching a 40-yard touchdown, which looked like, the play of the game, the biggest moment of his career. And what happens? He loses it at the last split second. But it didn't just murder his confidence. I mean, he had two big plays in overtime. It was just an 8-yarder, a 9-yarder, but two little plays that got him closer to field goal range. And then bigger than that, I wrote about this the morning after our column that's up at golongtd.com. But Alan Lazard, he's the number one. And I think you're seeing that trust in Lazard growing from Aaron Rodgers, which, he's a quarterback with trust issues. If you drop a ball, if you make a mistake, you're liable to be ignored for 2-3 quarters. Where he trusts Lazard. And Lazard is where he has to be, when he has to be there. He's not a burner. He's not going to be blowing past people. If he can get separation, he can get open over 100 yards, huge 22-yarder to start things in overtime when they're backed up on their own end. So I don't know. I felt like, it's, they didn't cover and it went to overtime and you're playing a third string quarterback and it's ugly, but get used to it, Packer fans, because you're going to win ugly. That's just that's the deal they kind of made going into this season. And that's okay. If I'm Green Bay, I'd rather be winning this way than just blowing teams out. Collect your wins this time of year, however you can get them.
Oh, Tyler, to win. You know what? That's all that matters.
Yeah, sorry, we just lost you for a couple seconds there.
Yeah, you froze on. Yeah, you paused quick. I was just saying, I didn't know either. However you get that win, get the win. And keep figuring it out next week, and we'll talk more about that with Buffalo. But Lazard, you just described Marcus Colston.
That is a fantastic comparison for Alan Lazard.
The way you just described Lazard, the way you were describing him is how as soon as he trusted Colston, his career it took off, and Colston's not a burner. So
that was such a great point, Jim. Keep talking because I got to tweet that out. That was a great point by you just now.
Go ahead. I'm going to keep talking then.
Yeah, you keep talking. Keep making great points.
Well, let's go back. You just said too. Get out the fact that you're not going to blow teams out anymore. And in the gambling world, we always have that saying: good teams win, great teams cover. Maybe Green Bay at one point was a great team. When you're the number one seed, you're a damn good team. Yeah. Right now, you're fighting. You're a new team. You're learning. I was thinking about watching yesterday with Rodgers and Devontae Adams, I'm sitting there looking at that Raiders game yesterday and thinking, man, how did they not want to at least try one more time? I always think about that with Kyrie Irving and LeBron. Why wouldn't you guys just want to stay together? I mean, it's tough but they have their reasons and they're both figuring it out, in their new places. But I'm kind of impressed with Green Bay winning that game and not falling apart and not getting nervous, or I think that's a good win for not. I'm just, anytime you can find ways to win that you're not used to or not accustomed to, that shows a sign of a well-coached team that believes in each other. And Green Bay's doing they're intriguing. They're still intriguing. If these young guys keep taking steps, like you're saying, and if you can just rely on those two running backs to keep fighting and getting you through the tough, as these guys grow together on the outside. I wish Sammy would have stayed healthy, Sammy Watkins, just to see if he would have helped. But that's the story of his career. But yeah,
he's always back.
He might come back at the best time because it's not like. Good point. He does come back. I know. You're right. We might be talking about. I wonder in 5 years if we're going to be like this. Sammy Watkins could give them a little boost this year. He was great at Clemson. I feel like, man, he was so good at Clemson.
Yeah, it's just this is a weird place to be for the Packers, but Aaron Rodgers is a above average quarterback right now. When you look at all the quarterback play a quarter into the season, he's been above average. That's not a slight. That is the way the team is built to win. You play off of your defense. You play off of your run game. He doesn't need to make the crazy plays in his game.
There you go. He's playing above average when we're used to special Mahomes and Josh Allen every game.
And look at case in point, the two plays that stood out more than any plays from week 4. Josh Allen late against Baltimore. He's dead to rights. He somehow escapes. He rolls left and twists his torso around and gun it to a dude that's covered tight along the sideline. And you think that's crazy. Then you see what Patrick Mahomes did down in Tampa. I mean, there. I don't even need to reference. Everybody knows. I mean, when you freeze the frame, there's one point where Mahomes is just like, it looks like he's dead to rights, and the player that he throws to is just in the middle of a cluster, of players, and somehow he gets right up to that line and just bops it over.
How?
But Aaron Rodgers isn't going to make those plays anymore. Physically, I mean, you can't at his age. But if he can make that throw that they need late in the game, when they keep the game close, there's going to be a lot of close games. I think that's hey, I mean, Peyton Manning wasn't Peyton Manning by the end, and they still won the Super Bowl. I don't think Rodgers is that bad. He's not that broken down. 2015 Peyton Manning,
no.
not
Rodgers
even close.
No.
I'm just saying that
that's good comparison. That's good though. Yeah, I see what you're saying. It's not
Drew
extreme.
Brees. Drew Brees was a turnover away from being in the NFC Championship game this last year. Right? He was not the same Brees.
No.
It's probably the more comparison there.
You want to lead to my next? You keep leading to the next thing because you're going to take me to another. The Saints.
We got to talk about the Saints.
I think you know what? Just roll with Andy Dalton, please. He's had a better career than Jameis Winston. He's more reliable than Winston. You can't win with Jameis Winston. I'm sorry. You're never going to win with Jameis Winston.
The injuries.
It's just too roller coastery, and there's just too much in general with him. I'm not saying he can't throw the football. Yes, Jameis Winston can throw the football. More to it than that.
Well, I mean, I think the point is almost the same as what you see in Green Bay. I mean, the Saints have a Super Bowl caliber defense. I feel bad for their defense watching games sometimes. I mean, if they're not, they're right up there. Demario Davis. Why do we not talk about him as one of the best linebackers? He's unbelievable.
And Tyler, he's been that way for a long time. And the Saints, and the one common thing you see on their defense, we always talk about junkyard dogs. That's all you want when you're scouting players. Just JYD, nasty guys, all across the board, especially on defense. They have it. Their secondary is nasty. Like linebackers, nasty. D-line, nasty. They are tough every position. Like punch you in the mouth, tough physical players. I think they are Super Bowl caliber defense. You sent me that text yesterday. I thought it was dead on. You almost feel bad for it. And what I texted you back almost felt a little bit like our 2014 Buffalo Bill defense.
Yeah.
Where I knew we had a Super Bowl caliber defense. We did.
You shut down Aaron Rodgers. You shut down Peyton Manning when Manning was still really good.
Yes, we had it. We had that defense.
Mario, Darius, Kyle Williams, Jerry Hughes, that T line.
Secondary. Yeah. Gilmore. Name it.
Aaron Williams.
I loved Aaron Williams. Name it. It was legit defense.
Yeah.
It's the famous defense that Rex said wasn't good enough. Anyway. All right. Not to get sidetracked.
No, I mean, I think that you're right. I mean, Marshawn Lattimore, Davis, even Mark Davenport.
And then the receiver they drafted, we talked about him last week, but he is incredible. They are like their offensive line, rock solid. I mean, they're a quarterback away. It's the same thing we keep talking about. Every team, you can have all these great players,
but they, at least in the short term, you're right. This is coming from a very I'm on record after being very pro Jameis, but the turnovers, like with that defense, you can't risk it. You could get by. You could win some games. You could make the playoffs with Andy Dalton as your quarterback.
No question. He's done it before. I think you roll the dice with Dalton the rest of the way. See what you got.
Minnesota, I guess it was ugly.
I don't know what to think. Man, Tyler, I got a little excited early to see, new coach and, I'm not saying you painted a good picture of how they needed to move on, but the one thing I'm not sure, is Kirk Cousins, I just don't know. And
He
is
did
their
not look good.
defense? Yeah, their defense is playing better.
I think we're seeing we've talked about this though. They're kind of top heavy with their roster because you
I
almost
think
cut the entire 2021 Rick Spielman draft class, yet you retain Cousins, you retain some good players in Jefferson, Thielen, Kendricks. You signed Darius Smith. You've got Daniil Hunter, Harrison Smith. Like there's a nucleus there where this team can contend. I mean, they pounded the Packers. Um, and then you look beyond that core, and there's a pretty significant drop off to some other positions, but mainly to the depth. Like they get a couple injuries, and I think they could get exposed. All I'm gonna say is like that's a game Mike Zimmer's teams lose, right? Like where
I
they're in
like that.
control,
I like
things
that.
go south. In the past, the Vikings just lose that game, and they didn't. They won. They rallied.
I felt that way about a couple teams yesterday. That and the opposite for some other teams where I thought the coach, it's like those are like I felt that way about Detroit. Like you're not where you need to be yet. Like those aren't. You can't be. If you think you're heading in the right direction, just lost to Seattle at home. I'm sorry that you have some issues still. Like you have some major issues. But yeah, to your point, good win for Minnesota. Get the win however you can.
All right, let's I'm gonna pull up the old docket here. Do you want to rapid fire some of these
Yeah,
games?
real quick. Here's a couple things I wanted to talk about. Ron Rivera. Hey, I'm sorry, man. Tyler Heineke, he did a great job for that team and organization. That team loves him. And I've talked about this. One of the key things as a franchise quarterback or a starting quarterback in general is have the rest of your team want to kill for you. Like they do have that mentality for a guy they believe in. That team believed in Taylor Heineke.
Yeah.
How did that organization decide that? My point with Carson Wentz and Heineke, why was the job just given to Wentz? Why didn't he have to earn that job? Why wouldn't the job be given to Heineke? Let Heineke fail first, because that team was showing signs last year. They were a fun team. They were a fun team for me to gamble on. Washington. I knew what I was getting with them because Heineke was that receiving core that Washington has right now is legit tough. Tight end tough.
It is.
Offensive line a little shaky. But Carson Wentz, it's enough. It's enough. But I don't want to get in on Wentz. I want to get in on how that organization decided to just hand Wentz the job. That's wrong. That was wrong. And Rivera, to let that happen to Rivera, I respect him for sure. But I got to look at Ron Rivera's track record without Cam Newton. I always have to make sure I got to look at that a little bit.
It was a move, I think, that really just shocked most of the football world to just that. Maybe not the fact that they acquired Carson Wentz, but they did it really fast, right? That was one of the first dominoes that fell.
It was like fast, and they got the guy that they've been dying for years. Like, it's your job, it's your team, and what? You just had a guy that,
right?
I mean, I don't know. That's strange to me.
Here's your stat of the
that
day.
May have come from. Go ahead.
I was just going to say, so they lost 25-10 to the Dallas Cowboys, the Commanders. That is.
That's gross.
All right, here's how much Cooper Rush is making this year: $1.035 million. Here's how much Carson Wentz is making this year: $28.29 million. And Cooper Rush outplayed him. Hey, we've been killing Mike McCarthy on this pod, on this site. We've seen his Packer teams go into the tank whenever Aaron Rodgers goes down. It just seemed like the whole team just, they just kind of just sagged just in every possible way. I mean, so covering some of those games, it was just brutal. Dallas is 3-0 without Dak Prescott. And I get it, that not exactly murderer's row, but they've been winning. Cooper Rush is playing well. Defensively, this is the first time since 1973 that they've held opponents to 19 points or less in their first 4 games. They've got a star in Micah Parsons. And now if I'm Dallas, I ain't rushing Dak Prescott back. I'm letting that thumb heal. But they're going to be in good shape when he comes back. Of course, Jerry Jones has been dropping the breadcrumbs that maybe there's a quarterback competition looming. Get the hell out of here, Jerry. Like,
No,
Mike McCarthy comes out and says, no, it's Dak Prescott's team. But
it
he's
is.
playing
And
well, but that's the job
oh,
of a backup.
that's what I was just gonna say. This is where you should feel good if you're Dallas. We've talked about backup quarterbacks a lot. I think it's important to have, huge, because you want that guy to keep you afloat until Dak gets back, and then if you do better than that, that's just icy. And what they're getting right now, if Dak comes back and this thing starts clicking and the offensive line comes back a little bit healthier and you get the running game going when Dak gets back even more, you're fighting again now. Now you're in competition. Because that defense, Dan Quinn's done a nice job there. He's really, they've made strides. Well, it helps when you have Harrisburg PA's Micah Parsons.
Hey, that draft pick, Will McClay, whoever's behind that.
I like that you at least mentioned. I like that you mentioned Will McClay.
He doesn't get nearly
because
the
everybody
due
just
deserves.
talks about Steven and Jerry Jones being the GMs and.
Probably, I really don't know Will McClay. But I feel bad for him.
My
Right?
point is,
behind the scenes, think about the fires he has to put out.
Yeah, I like that you just bring in a personnel guy that I promise you those personnel guys are doing some good work in Dallas. I know a lot of those guys. I've always respected their organization as a scouting staff, and that it's more than Jerry and Steven and that.
Well, think about how difficult it is to do your job. If you're in Will McClay's seat, anybody that's higher up in that front office, when like you study these players, the good prospects versus the bad prospects, and your boss, who just happens to be one of the richest human beings in the country, is trying to make picks, has anointed himself the general manager, and has the final say. How do you challenge that person, right? Like, it pays to kiss that person's ass. It pays to be a yes man or yes woman, for your livelihood, for your family's livelihood. So you have, food on your plate. Like, it pays for you to, yes, Jerry, you're right. When he could be dead wrong. I mean, this is somebody who wanted to draft Johnny Manziel instead of Zach Martin and get talked out of that. And then he wanted Paxton Lynch, right? He was almost in tears that he didn't get Paxton Lynch in the draft that they get Dak Prescott. So I just feel for those people in personnel. Like, you guys are the ones watching film all day, all night. These prospects. Like, Jerry's just kind of bopping in, bopping out, like going around his helicopter. Yeah, he is the final say. It's got to be tough to challenge that person with that much power.
Well, it's funny. I was thinking about when you say bring up Paxton Lynch, it goes to your point where if you just watch film on Paxton Lynch and see him work out, you're drafting him high. But then when you study, and we found this out, our scouts told us, and when you interview him, you realize there was a little bit of a learning curve for Paxton Lynch as far as how sophisticated of an offense can he handle, what kind of defenses has he seen, how much does he really love and know football, and it wasn't checking out. We spent a lot of time with him. We sent Greg Roman and David Lee at the time, but they spent time with him, pro days, all that, because he was talented, but you have to you gotta walk away, because if it's not,
you can see why Jerry Jones fell in love with him. Then
you can see why, but you can also see that he, hopefully
that's what I'm saying. That's why you need somebody who actually is a football person running your team.
That was a perfect example.
And as excited as you want to get about the Cowboys, I just can't get past that. I don't see them winning a Super Bowl. I see things ending in a tire fire one way or another because of the structure of the organization.
Fair.
But credit where credit's due. Hey, I've been really harsh. We have to give Dallas a little credit down there.
Before I forget, another thing, really, just to get off my mind, that we had a little discussion about Sam Darnold and Baker Mayfield, and I said Darnold might be better, and you were like, whatever. Bottom line is, we shouldn't. If we're debating on who's better between Baker and Darnold, bad for everybody involved. It doesn't matter which one you're playing. It's not going to be good enough. They both have played themselves into I hate to say it, a backup role almost in the NFL. It's how they're starting to look. I it's hard to watch those guys play. And Matt Rule, that offense is like, I thought Carolina's offense, I think they have more talent than they're showing. They're hard to watch. I was high on Carolina. I thought there was a chance.
Mm-hmm.
It's not working. That Matt Rule, I'm not blaming it all on Rule. I'm not blaming it all on Baker, but it's not working.
Christian McCaffrey had a 34-yard reception. Beyond that, the passing game was basically non-existent. I mean, there really wasn't anything.
And look at that, and look at those skill guys they have. How can that passing game be non-existent?
Robbie Anderson, DJ Moore. Yeah, and Christian McCaffrey has 8 carries. Uh, I know he had the 9 catches, but maybe it's
It's
worth giving him more than those 8 carries.
I think so. I think he needs more touches. That's why you draft him as high as you did. I know McDermott wasn't real like he wasn't in love with when we were picking high that year. And McCaffrey may have been, he went before us anyway, but we talked about him. Obviously, he's there. We all love, everybody loves McCaffrey, but I remember Sean like giving a little, he wasn't like in love with that pick if we had to take him. I think it was because of what is he? You have to have you have to have a vision for him. To draft him, you better have the vision for him because he's never going to be your every down. You're not going to pound him 25 times a game. I don't know if anybody does that in the NFL anymore anyway. But like I picture Sean Payton, with Christian McCaffrey, and Drew Brees, it'd be like unbelievable what the stats he probably have. Almost like Kamara. They know how to use certain guys. I don't know if they know how to, I just don't know if they have a plan for McCaffrey right now.
You don't trust Ben McAdoo to figure that out?
Well, that's a good one.
Yeah. I don't see things turning around in Carolina. And yeah, Baker Mayfield hasn't been great, but you watch their offense and Dan Orlovsky pointed this out. He's just simple things that I wouldn't know. The way the players are aligned, in the backfield, are complete tells to what they're going to do.
Yeah, I heard him talking about that.
It just seems very simplistic and
it does. It seems like a high school thing. Yeah.
Yeah. All right. How about let's see.
We didn't touch on
get to the Bills
Bucks.
quick on another.
Oh yeah,
pod,
let's do Bills. Yeah.
No. We'll catch up on there on a separate app real quick. But yeah, Chiefs Bucks 41-31. Mahomes had the crazy play. Tampa just threw pretty much every down.
I'm not. We talked all year. I've been skeptical on Tampa all year. I do. I'm not saying they're not. When I say skeptical, I'm saying, are they really good enough to win a Super Bowl? I don't know. It's a lot to ask of Brady. There was a couple times last night when I was like, I wonder if Brady just wants to be done. If he's starting to think maybe not. I don't know. I just can't. Every time I watch him, I just can't understand how he's still doing it. When he gets hit.
At what cost? We'll never know.
At what cost?
Family-wise. God. Something's up there, but I'm shocked that their defense was this bad last night.
The Chiefs look, at the end of the day, this is a long season. The Chiefs are fine. The Bills are fine. With the same teams we talked about before the season are going to be battling at the end. I'm not sure if the Chargers are the next team. Do the Bengals. I'm trying to think who's going to crack the Bills Chiefs who's going to try to sneak in there. I don't know who.
I got a team for you.
Can't wait.
My Cincinnati Bengals. They're figuring it out, Jim. Little slow start.
We didn't talk about that Thursday night game.
All right, let's do this then. How about we instead? We didn't touch on some of the games here, but that's fine. All right, there's the game itself, and then there's the game within the game that probably isn't even talked about enough when it comes to concussions and how they're dealt with. The game itself, Cincinnati at home against an injured Miami team. Burrow looked like Burrow. T. Higgins, is legit him. Number one in his own right.
They're loaded. Look, they're loaded on offense. We don't have to. Right? They're loaded on offense. Their defense should be. Their defense will figure things out. Yes, I'm with you on the Bengals as being one of those teams. Yeah,
I love their defense. Even when they were, they lost to the Steelers. Their defense looked.
Oh yeah, their defense. No, I think they're one of those teams that they'll figure it out. It's a long year. I just think it's that hard to crack. I still think it's going to be hard to crack those guys. But yes, if you have Burrow, if you have Herbert, you have put yourself into that ability to compete with Buffalo and KC.
But I mean, the big news: another back injury for Tua Tagovailoa, Jim. Those tricky backs.
Oh, I don't even want to laugh.
I shouldn't joke around. It was
No,
serious as it gets.
that was a great line because you're right. It's hard to believe that they tried to pass that off.
And I hate to, the last thing I want to do is play Twitter doctor because
I know.
I mean, I saw the play against Buffalo too. It looks like his head hits the turf. He gets up, he wobbles around it. I mean, it sure looks like this guy suffered some head trauma. But if we're gonna take, I mean, unless Mike McDaniel just blatantly lying to everybody.
Too much unknown for us we just don't know. But
my takeaway is this, though. You've got an NFL and an NFLPA joint investigation, right? So the union, they're looking out for the players' best interests, should be. And that independent, neurologist, the UNC has already been whacked. I'll just say this when it comes to all things NFL, PA, NFL, at the end of the day, the bottom line is the bottom line, right? At the end of the day, I think that both sides know concussions are bad for football and the branding of football. And I sure as hell hope that the NFLPA is going to do everything in their power to look out for players that aren't going to look out for themselves, because these guys want to stay on the field. There's too much on the line. There's too much money. Guys don't want to lose their jobs. You've lived in that world. But when this went down Thursday night, Ryan Leaf, friend of the program here, we've had him on, or I had a conversation with him. We put it on the podcast feed, and it was chilling to hear Ryan Leaf talk about concussions and the effects it does or has on you when you're done playing. I mean, he went through depression, addiction, so much that's well documented, and it's an ongoing battle. But the NFLPA had a tweet out. This is the NFLPA's account. They said, player health and safety is at the core of the union's mission. Our concern tonight is for Tua, and we hope for a full and speedy recovery. Our investigation into the potential protocol violation is ongoing. So Ryan quote tweets this, earmuffs for the kids out there. In all caps, he says, the fuck it is. Stop pushing out your and the NFL's propaganda. You are just as complicit in what happened. How do you look at yourselves in the mirror? So this obviously elicited quite a bit of reaction. I think, if you're just a general fan, consumer of the sport, it's like, oh, yeah, of course the union's looking after the players. And of course they're battling, duking it out with the league at every turn, like any corporation, any union. Well, it's different when it comes to concussions. It is different, Jim, because my brain right away went to 2016, sitting down with Chris Borland. I think it was the first story I wrote at Bleacher Report after they hired me as a features writer. It was a year after he stepped away from football, shocked the world. I mean, one of the most promising young linebackers is just quitting football because of concussion concerns. So the story is how he's kind of moving on in life, his thoughts about the future of the NFL. And he made this point, and I heard from the NFLPA after I wrote this. Borland said that in 2012, so this is a full year before League of Denial comes out, the documentary and the book, which that's really what changed the way everybody looks at concussions and made us take it more seriously. 2012, he said the NFLPA was set to release a 94-page document to the players that detailed the long-term effects of concussions. And it never saw the light of day. Quote, it was too damning, Borland said. It revealed too much. The whole intent was to inform players, and players don't see it. I don't know, it was a few days after this, I heard from somebody with the NFLPA, and I tried to reach out to the Players Association, and I never heard back. But they said, they were kind of fishing. Where'd you hear this? It's totally false.
So they said it was false.
Yeah, but kind of trying to figure out where did this come from? At the same time,
it doesn't seem like something he would make up.
My point: be skeptical. Yeah. Concussions, NFL. I don't care how many documentaries come out, how many Will Smith movies come out. We should be because this is the one thing that can still threaten the brand and threaten the shield.
Almost the only thing.
Totally. I mean, look at everything that they've gone through. They've gone through, Adrian Peterson beating his kid, Ray Rice
Done.
beating his,
Right.
all
We're
that stuff.
moving on. We'll keep the train.
Well,
Right.
it's just a freight train. It just keeps
Freight
going.
train. One thing.
Exactly. Because that scene of Tua, his
What
fingers in his arms locking
the
up and he gets taken out on a stretcher. How many moms out there
reactions?
want their kids to play when they see that?
No, and the reactions from former players the next day on the, I saw like Rob Ninkovich tearing up, and those guys, it's frightening, man. They know how scary that is. And then to think that it could have been misdiagnosed or there was something going that's the parts I just, like we said, we don't know enough medically. How do you misdiagnose? What was the protocol? What was done? So scary. But there's just no way to see him go through that after a couple days, after, from Sunday to Thursday, knowing that he probably hadn't even recovered from Sunday.
Right.
That's yeah. So anyway, scary.
Right. You hope that the Dolphins didn't,
I hope so, because I do like
convince
Chris Greer
an
as the
independent
GM.
neurologist
I like
to make
coach,
them like
yeah.
So
You
Tua
hope
will
they're
be interviewed. Mike McDaniel. It could get messy fast, but on the field, it's a shame. I thought Tua was playing really well.
Was. Oh, and I back you up on your. I know you put that one little thing on that one throw that he made.
Oh yeah,
dropped it right. That would have been I give him 2 points on that one.
Right.
I know that was a hell of a throw.
A lot of clutter.
Dropped that. He in clutter dropped it right over a guy and he couldn't have gone it anywhere else. Now you could maybe argue if he should or shouldn't have thrown the ball into that much coverage, but hell of a throw.
Yeah, it was a pretty innocuous, it wasn't even analysis, just saying, oh, Tua was playing really damn well before. Holy cow, he's a content machine, man. It doesn't matter what you say about Tua, good or bad.
They want to just I
can't
get over, and I kept saying just lower your expectations. He's good. He's a good quarterback.
All right, that's going to do it for this wrap up. Check out the extra abbreviated podcast in your feed for a little Bills talk. Thank you so much for listening, everyone. All righty, this is another abbreviated edition of the Go Long podcast. Hopefully you caught our week 4 wrap up, hitting on a bunch of different games, concussions in the NFL. Things got serious. And as promised, from time to time, hopefully more often than not, they've had some weird scheduled games, so it's kind of made us pod differently than we were planning out. But we want to do some separate Bills-centric podcasts for those listeners out there that might just want to jump right to the Bills content here in Western New York. So, yes, we are fueled by Fatty Beer Company here in Western New York. Fantastic sours, IPAs, wheats, anything you want around the country. Our buddies Nick and Chris, they're finding the good stuff. So get on in there, $30, all you can drink for Bills games. And we are going to be there Tuesday, if it's still before Tuesday, around noon, if you want to join us. But Jim, the Bills down 22-3, and they come back to win 23-20. Have some thoughts here, but fire away with yours.
Yeah, I'm going to be I want to hear yours a little bit more from my perspective. And I watched the game on Red Zone again, so I don't want to, full disclosure, you probably watched it a little more intense than I did. I love what I saw. That's a hell of a win for the Buffalo Bills. I think a hell of a win on the road against that type of team, coming off that game that they just had in Miami, that we know how exhausted they were, and then to go back on the road and go down like that to Lamar Jackson, who looked like Lamar and unstoppable. I don't know about you, but it looked like it was going to be the Bills were going to have to win a track meet is how it kind of was going to look to me. And it just went the other way. That's a hell of a win. And the way Sean McDermott looked after that game, and I know that game means a lot to those guys because they have that history, he and Harbaugh and together, and Sean started, that means something to all those guys. But that goes to solidify that this is a Super Bowl team. That's a hell of a win.
I think it was one of the most impressive wins of the Brandon Beane, Sean McDermott era. Really,
I would 100% agree with you. And we haven't talked about this at all. I agree with you on that.
Yeah, I mean, it was exactly how you put. and Baltimore had the Bills on rollerblades. They were just
What
getting
was the
blown off
turning
the
point?
ball early on.
So I stopped paying attention. Red zone kind of went away from that game a little bit for a while, and there's what did you see as the turning point a little bit? Where did Buffalo start to, or where did Baltimore not take advantage of their lead and really,
Right. It was at the end of the first half, and I think it was Patrick Queen dropped an interception when they
Oh
were
yeah,
up
I saw that
20
highlight.
to
Yeah.
3, and the Bills are trying to get some points at the end of the half. They drop a pick, and the Bills drive. Isaiah McKenzie scores a touchdown, cut it to 2010. That was huge. I mean, I think
Huge. Yep.
that could have been 27-3 at the half
Right.
instead of 2010. So I think that's probably what you're looking at. And but yeah, beyond that, I mean, to me, Matt Milano, holy crap, he was the best player on the field, tracking down Lamar Jackson. Remember, it was just 2 years ago. Milano was posterized, in
Posterized.
right on the edge of the defense. Lamar kind of gave him a crossover, and
That
he
could have
just
been
breaks.
Milano. I feel bad for Milano. That could have been about 90% of the other guys
Totally.
in the
It's
NFL.
anybody in that position. Milano was unbelievable. He finished with 13 tackles, 11 solo,
He's everywhere.
2 for loss, everywhere. I mean, a lot of open field tackles. So you're talking like not a lot of help around, where if he doesn't make the tackle, this thing ruptures. He justified his contract and then some. I think that he's the modern day linebacker. I mean, we talked about
that's
him
how
out of
we
BC.
saw him.
You scouted him.
Yes, that's exactly. Just like we were talking about having a vision for a player, Sean, he had a vision for Milano after, once he had him, and it just keeps getting better and better. So they've done a great job having a vision for a player, and now you're getting the most out of him.
Playmaker, in addition to being a tackling machine, he can hold his own and run support. So he really turned that tide, I think, defensively, where it looked like they were going to just get blown up, because it was like 1 week after the Bills just seemed to like wither in the heat. It looked like they were withering in the rain. It's like, are there elements this team can play in? And then that final drive of the first half, they score, they get comfortable defensively. They start pushing the Ravens around. They play on the Ravens' terms, right? The Bills want that track meet. They want to blow teams out. There's a reason they've lost their last 7 one-score games. So to win a 1-score game on Baltimore's like back alley terms, where it's a brawl, is huge. I don't think you can understate how big of a win this is for Buffalo. I
100% agree. I don't think you can put it. I agree. I don't think you put a value on how big of a win that was.
Josh Allen led you in rushing again. We go back and forth on how much you should run. Colin Cowherd made this point as well. I still think it's so true. You lean into your quarterback's superpower. Like, if that is something your 6'5", 245 freak show of a quarterback does well, why would you neuter that? Why would you? I get it. You run the risk of injuries, but there's ways to avoid the kill shot like Lamar does.
I think as long as if you're the Bills, as long as you feel like Josh Allen at least understands how to protect himself to the best that he can when he's running, to your point, get down when you can get down. Don't always be a hero. Be a hero. I know that's in you. Do it when you want. I mean, when to do it, but know when the play is done. Know when the play's over. Try to protect yourself. But I agree, you can't take that out of him. It's like, you can't. I mean, it's just who he is.
Yeah, I just, the Bills, if there's a criticism for this organizational resurgence, it's the fact that they're kind of front runners, right? Like, when the getting's good, they'll run you out of the building and stomp on your grave, all that stuff. But if they get punched in the mouth, how do they respond? Like, this is a game where they got punched in the jaw and they were wobbly and it looked like it was going to get away from them, but they steadied themselves and they really fought back in that second half with some setbacks. I mean, Gabe Davis had some bad drops. They weren't perfect, but they overcame,
Even more to your point. Now, how do you feel about Lamar in that game?
I don't think he was necessarily like special, and I don't think he was necessarily bad.
Did the conditions prevent him from being special?
They might have. Yeah, they might have.
I'm more asking.
They looked great early on. I mean, he was running well early on. And,
it's like
the defense.
I know. I'm sitting there thinking I just can't get out of my head that Mahomes, Lamar, Josh Allen, these guys this is going to be awesome AFC playoffs.
You know what probably is the number one takeaway though from this game? It's the coaches. John Harbaugh on the goal line, goal to go.
Explain
They
this.
they go for it on 4th and goal. So they could have kicked a field goal with whatever it was, 6-7 minutes left.
Right.
In this kind of game, like, I guess he didn't really trust his defense, but it was wet. It was a slower game. I was surprised he didn't kick the field goal.
Shocked.
Uh, but
I
let's
hate
face it,
field goals. I hate field
we
goals.
always
but they're
criticize these
so
coaches for the chip shot field goals too.
It wasn't a track meet type game. I mean, it was.
You're right. And I don't think he was expecting an interception. So Jordan Poyer picks it off in the end zone. Now you're starting from the 20 instead of your 1 yard line.
And that was why, because they were saying if we don't get stopped, they still have to go the whole right.
It's like the absolute worst thing that could have happened for Baltimore is an interception there. So he's like, it's not a big deal if we don't get it. That's a big deal, but not that big of a deal because we can pin him back, maybe get a safety, maybe force an errant punt, get the ball right back. But also on the flip side, so if that's quote unquote bad game management, bad coaching, the Bills, the way they executed the end of that game-winning field goal drive where Devin Singletary knew he couldn't score right at the end, and I can't remember who it was for the Ravens. Some fool just flies in and tackles him instead of letting him score. Calais Campbell instantly puts his hands on top, like, oh, what are you doing? But like as soon as he did that, and then Josh Allen kind of did a weird quarterback sneak thing.
Everything got weird after. Everything was weird at that point.
But it was just beautiful clock management. Like this is something that has held the Bills back. Sean McDermott, the way he operates at the end of games, we saw it at Arrowhead, 13 seconds. They executed a plan at the end that worked the clock to their advantage, which is another huge win for the Bills. That's why I'm calling this, like, this is a breakthrough win for the team. I really believe that. I
think you can feel safe to say that. I agree with you. I took the exact same thing. I was like, that is a hell of a win. Just like Kansas City, just like KC, right? Just like what Kansas City did. Like, there's certain games when now you're going back, right? KC's traveling back home. Buffalo goes back home, and you're looking around at each other like, we are right on track. We are right on the path for the Super Bowl.
You see that play that Allen makes, escaping that rush we talked about on the last pod, and then you see Patrick Mahomes's touchdown pass. It's like, I think as a general consumer of the sport, you just hope that these two quarterbacks face off again in the playoffs too.
And I'm not going to be upset if Lamar sneaks in there either.
Oh yeah.
Just let me watch this. Let me watch all those guys nonstop. It's incredible. But yeah, I agree. You're right. That's a great point you made too about for the coaching staff in Buffalo to not be on the opposite side of like Harbaugh is facing right now.
Right.
Because not only did they lose, they're coming at Harbaugh now for that, like his own players.
That's very true. Marcus Peters was not happy.
We haven't heard that or seen that in Baltimore before.
All right, everybody. Thanks so much for listening to our podcast. Be sure to rate, review, share with a friend, read all the stuff at golongtd.com. And remember this book right behind me, The Blood and Guts. You can get 30% off with a signed book plate. Just follow the link on my Twitter account @TyDunn. Would love it if you supported this project, put a lot of work into it. I think that you're all going to love it. My God, it was fun hanging out with all these tight ends. Thanks, everyone.